kickstarting the show with a very, very concerning and important conversation. And it's one that we don't think about every day. Millions of us climb into our cars, we board taxis or wait for buses without giving a lot of thought to what we are breathing in. We complain about traffic, especially here in Joburg, the rising fuel prices, the potholes on our roads. But what if the biggest danger on our roads isn't an accident? There's new research from the University of Johannesburg, which has found that communities in central and southern Johannesburg found this very, very concerning because our offices are right in the south of Johannesburg. That research found that people living in and around those communities are exposed to significantly higher levels of harmful vehicle emissions. The study estimated that more than 500 premature deaths every single year in the city are linked to pollution from older vehicles. Hey, it's a scary and very, very uncomfortable conversation because it almost forces us to ask difficult questions. Why are poorer communities, as always, carrying the burden of heavier pollution? Are our vehicle emission laws simply too weak? And as South Africa continues to import older secondhand vehicles and people keeping their older vehicles on our roads, are we unknowingly almost creating a public health emergency? Should there be a bit more education around it and the damage that our older vehicles are causing? So we'll be trying to answer all of those questions, and joining us now to do exactly that is Boitemogelo Kwakwa, Program Manager for Air Quality and Environment at the University of Johannesburg's Process, Energy and Environment Technology Station. Boitemogelo, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's only a pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's good to meet you.
No, thank you. Likewise. I want to jump right into it. I just skimmed through the research and it was very, very scary. If you can just give us a short synopsis of it for our listeners, what it's all about, what did you guys uncover in this research, and most importantly, are there any mitigating factors that can be put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen? I mean, 500 deaths every year. One can calculate in the last 10 years how many deaths were that. It's really concerning.
Yeah, it is actually, like you're saying, a health crisis. I'm currently attending the Africa Clean Air Forum, where we're discussing all of this air quality issues, and I had been invited to speak on the transport and inequity around exactly what this report is talking about. So basically, what we have done together with the ICCT and the Clean Air Fund was we did a roadside emissions testing. So there's equipment on either side of the road, and we made sure to have our sites located all around the city of Johannesburg, northwest, southeast, to see who's coming in from Tshwane in and out, to see, like you said, the results found that in the central and the south, especially, those were the highest affected areas. And then essentially, this can be translated, like you're saying, by health experts who can quantify it in amount of premature deaths, in amount of lung disease, all of these illnesses that can be associated. And what we have done with that data is we've been able to provide the city, and I mean everyone, it was launched this week, Monday, actually, with empirical evidence that can back you up if you're saying, look, we want to intervene with cleaner fuels as a strict standard in our country, which is something we do need to do. We've done other research around the Euro 6 standards, which are emission standards. It was specifically related to heavy-duty vehicles, but the notion from that and merging together with this one very nicely is that as South Africa, in particular, because that's where we're based, we need to move to having better fuel quality so that we have less ppm emitted from our cars, considering our socioeconomic context, that in the central and the south, that's where you do find your oldest vehicles. That's where you do get your biggest quantities of minibus taxis and larger buses as well, because people rely on public transport. And I think in these two areas, you might be able to concur that it is also where people are less formally housed. So that's also an issue, because that means there are people living on land that was vegetated or could be vegetated to help with absorbing all of this pollution, as opposed to in your urban and suburban areas where every house is located sparsely and it's full of trees, there's no traffic, So yeah, I hope that answers your question and gives you a good idea of what we found and what we can do about it.
It did, but I still have a lot more questions, because one other question that comes to my mind is, how did then researchers determine that it was air pollution from vehicles specifically that contributed to this deaths, rather than, I don't know, health conditions or any other kind of pollution, which is, as you mentioned, especially in informal settlements and areas that are maybe close to some industrial areas, that could also be a factor. So the fact that it is specifically from vehicles, do we know how that was determined?
A lot of studies have been done on vehicle emissions in particular, and health risk assessments. It's one of the tools that is used to translate people's exposure to a certain pollutant that you're focused on. So there are standards and equations, calculations that do exist to be able to, for us to translate that information into health data. So because this was specifically focused on vehicles, it follows the standard research avenue of vehicles, quantities, which pollutants in particular, and what are those pollutants related to in terms of people's health. Then you can assume the calculations based on that. Yeah. So, for example, you have your nitrous oxides, which irritates your lungs. You've got particulate matter that can go, if it's small enough, deep into your lungs and even into your bloodstream, right? And you've got your carbon monoxide that comes out as well. That reduces your access to clean air, to oxygen delivery from the environment. And you've also got your hydrocarbons, which contribute to the ozone and smog. So there's a very deep researched relationship between each of these pollutants and the health impact. So you're able to do that.
Very fascinating and very, very concerning. I want us to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to focus on environmental inequality. And I think you touched on it quite briefly also, the fact that, you know, these are the people that are affected are mostly coming from lower income communities, and they appear to be carrying, you know, the biggest burden of air pollution. So I want us to unpack just briefly on that and to answer the question on whether or not this is not just an environmental issue, but also an environmental justice issue, because I don't think that's spoken about enough. But we'll do that after this short break.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Right now, over 150 million children around the world are orphaned, facing hunger, hardship, and uncertainty. With Islamic Relief's Orphan Sponsorship Program, you can provide a child with access to education, nutritious food, essential healthcare, and a safe home. Your sponsorship is not just support, it's hope, security, and a brighter future. Be the reason an orphan child smiles again. Sponsor an orphan today with Islamic Relief.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Are you banking with convenience, transparency, and flexibility? With Al Baraka Bank's transactional banking account, you can enjoy convenient everyday banking designed around your needs. Benefit from zero fees on point-of-sale transactions and manage your banking easily through Al Baraka's secure mobile banking app and internet banking platform. From everyday payments to managing your personal or business banking, Al Baraka makes banking simple, transparent, and convenient. Visit albaraka.co.za to learn more. Al Baraka, your partner bank. Al Baraka Bank Limited is an authorized financial services and credit provider.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
18 minutes past 8 Central African time, and welcome back. You're still tuning in to News and Views. Myself, Salailo Makwidiri. I'm still in conversation with Boitemogelo Kwakwa, Program Manager for Air Quality and Environment at the University of Johannesburg's Process, Energy and Environment Technology Station. And we're having a really, as much as it's fascinating, it's very, very concerning. The issue around research that they conducted, which found that older vehicles have been tied to at least 500 deaths in Johannesburg. And the southern and central part of Johannesburg has experienced much higher pollution levels compared to other parts of the city. And Boitemogelo, thank you so much for staying with us. Before we went on to that short break, I wanted to look specifically at one of the striking findings of this research, the fact that lower income communities appear to be the biggest, biggest bearers of the burden of this pollution. Is this becoming an environmental justice issue rather than simply an environmental one?
It has always been, in my eyes, an environmental justice issue. I think if you look specifically into the context historically of South Africa, there are certain areas that have been built systematically to be away from the city towns, to be on the outskirts. And that's what we call our low and middle income communities, right? So what happens with them is that they are overpopulated, which means that there is so much action happening and not enough environmental absorption that is able to take place because there's no vegetation, there's no trees, like I mentioned earlier. And also with our socioeconomic context, you find that in these areas, these people are probably of the lesser earning bracket. That means their vehicles are much older. That means they are relying on public transport to get to and from the city center or industry or wherever the main business is happening. So it has always been a justice problem in my eyes that we need to approach this with equity. I understand we are chasing, the national and global movement towards let's get EVs, let's do this and all of that. But we also need to understand that every country has its own context that we need to look at. We need to first deal with the fact that those areas are overpopulated. Let's get people in proper infrastructure, proper housing. Let's afford them the opportunity to participate in our movement. And this is something I spoke about yesterday at the forum, to say that when we're looking at investment and where to put our efforts, we must start with the smallest and most bottom actions. That way we can get people up to a place where at least the burden is, it can be gray area equal, but it's less, it must be less focused. Otherwise, what we're doing is that we are progressing the urban and suburban areas and then making sure that now this gap that we already have socioeconomically is only getting wider. Because if we don't support these communities that are bearing the brunt, the burden, I mean, they barely have access to good healthcare facilities in their vicinity. If we don't support them, then we're basically, just leaving them out to fend for themselves. So in my eyes, it's always been a justice and equity issue. And just to clarify quickly for your listeners, the name is Boitemogelo. Boitemogelo is someone completely different. Yes.
No, sorry for that, Boitemogelo, and thank you. I wanna come to whether or not you guys in your research know or have figured out who are the biggest polluters, what type of vehicles specifically are responsible for most of these harmful emissions. Are we talking about trucks? Is it buses? You touched on taxis and the fact that they are also, a lot of them on our roads was just private cars or all of them combined, it doesn't really make a difference which specific vehicle.
It is a combination, but I think there are some highlights that I can pull. And I will make sure that I'll give you guys access to the report so that you can also share it as it's been launched officially this week. We have seen that diesel is a big contributor simply because the ppm is a lot higher. So the fuel of diesel is not always as refined as could be, right? And this is often applicable to our older vehicle models. I think now a lot more cars run on petrol, 93, 95 versus diesel. And then it also applies to our heavy duty vehicles, because heavy duty vehicles, cars bought in 2001 that a family has kept because it's the only one they have, those things stay on the road for so long that even their internal maintenance equipment struggles to keep up. And that's when you start to see the Patco buses with the black smoke, that tells you that that is a very old vehicle that works a lot and it probably travels a lot. So what it's carrying is almost a weapon of mass destruction, but don't quote me on that one.
I'm quoting you directly. I mean, it's killing people, 500 deaths a year. I mean, if it was any other weapon, it would definitely be described as that.
Yeah. Something interesting, though, was that taxis didn't form as high percentage of the vehicles that we expected, but the amount of their pollution is between, I think, 30 and 40% of the total. So they're not a big fraction of taxis, but they amount for a lot, proportionally of the pollution. So that also then speaks to, because we had access to the number plates, we were able to see when was the vehicle registered, how big is it, and that kind of detail without going into people's personal details. And we saw that a lot of these vehicles, they are the older ones. And when you look again at our justice and socioeconomics, it's because people cannot afford to buy new cars. Taxi owners are probably still using those those
Super 16 Lidisia, yeah, correct.
The Karakara, yes.
Yeah,
They're still using those because a Quantum now, it's $1 million, So some people are just, they're not deliberately trying to kill people, but it's that they are economically unable to keep up at this point. And we can see that with the rising cost of everything in this country, that I'll just hang on to my little 2001 Toyota Conquest because that's what I can do. It can get me to work and back. And
it's reliable, Boitemogelo. It's reliable. That's what we're told. When you buy a car, get a reliable car, but you're not told
reliable car.
that if years down the line you'll be killing people. And I want to come at that because we could be running out of time on the age factor, because I think that's what's at the center of this research here. What is old in this context? What do you consider an older vehicle? Is it 10 years old, 15 years old? And I'm not sure if you can answer this because maybe you're not a car expert, but do we also know why are older engines so much more dangerous compared to modern vehicles?
I can answer a bit of the latter question. Can't give you a definite on the numbers there on old. But as manufacturing development technology gets better, a lot of refinements are happening in the engines, in the car itself, right? Making sure that it's more fuel efficient. I think right now you'll find a lot of cars are more fuel efficient, so there's less emissions coming from them. They have more electronic-based systems and all of that. So as time goes on and they get better with their technology, they're even able to provide things like filters inside the vehicle to make sure that these emissions don't leave the car. So it's really just that we're developing technology, we're developing research, and manufacturers are keeping up to try to minimize the health impact. And I think our refineries need to do the same very, very soon. It would be nice to see us running at Euro 6 emission standards, because South Africa, out of all the world, we're the only ones still operating on Euro 2. Euro 6 only allows for a 10 ppm emission from both diesel and petrol. So you can imagine we would be standing in a much better place if we could just jump over to that standard. make sure our fuels are correct, and then also capacitate the people with older vehicles and the more, I'll call them dangerous vehicles, capacitate them to keep up, support them where they need the support to be able to reach what we want to do as a country, to relieve ourselves of this health burden and have less people related to mortality by air quality.
What could be done by government right now or by the relevant authorities, which could be the first step in trying to mitigate, this problem before it gets out of hand? Because, unlike some countries on the continent, South Africa, I don't think has gotten to a point where we are importing a lot of older vehicles from different parts of the world, like China or some parts of Europe. You still get newer cars that are imported directly in South Africa. Some are assembled here in South Africa. So that's one aspect. Is there anything at this moment that the government can do before the issue completely gets out of hand?
It's already out of hand. We're trying to reel it back in, right? I think something that I would personally advise the government to focus on is ensuring that we better the fuel standards. Because if we can say that we are going to Euro 6, that means only 10 ppm fuel is allowed, and that we refine our fuel to support that 10 ppm limit, then we've already cut out a whole chunk of things. Because currently we've got 50 ppm, even 100 ppm, that these huge machines are running on, the trucks, the buses, because they travel such long distances. But it's really bad. So I think the first step would be the fuel standards and making sure that our fuel is refined to help us relieve the health burden.
And one person will say you want to make it more expensive. But anyway, Boitemogelo, thank you so much for joining us. I think it was a really, really eye-opening conversation. Really appreciate your time, and kudos to you and your team. I think this is very, very important work that you guys have done on a topic that I don't think many of us think about. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a good day.
There we go. Boitemogelo Kwakwa, Program Manager for Air Quality and Environment at the University of Johannesburg's Process, Energy and Environment Technology Station. Yeah, really concerning stuff and a very, very important conversation. But I think I need to dig in a bit on this research and try and find out specifically what does constitute an older vehicle. Because I think when you buy a car, you always told to get a reliable car. A car that can, I don't know, last you 10, 15 years, even 20. It'll be interesting. Maybe you are, one of the people that are driving around Johannesburg in your older car and you don't even know. So it would be nice to know that models from this year to this year are maybe not the best to be driving on our roads. And they're essentially killing people. Going to take a quick break. News and Views will be back with you right after this.